Hey guys, tonight we stand on a shore that shouldn't exist. The air doesn't smell of diesel fumes and hot asphalt. It smells of salt, wet stone, and pine resin so thick it stings your nostrils. You are on the northern tip of a great island, what our world calls Newfoundland, but the year is 1012, and you don't know that name. You look out at the settlement, and it is not a quaint, reconstructed tourist village. It is alive. It is real. Longhouses, low-slung and immense, crouch against the wind. Their turf roofs are vibrant, living green against the grey sky. Their timbers are not the pale birch of Scandinavia, but the deep, reddish-brown of American spruce. Smoke, smelling of peat and hardwood, curls from vents in the roofs, carrying the sounds of a guttural, alien tongue you vaguely recognize as Old Norse. Men with sun-bleached beards and women with hair in intricate braids move with purpose. Their clothing, a strange mix of homespun wool and supple, dark leather you now know comes from the seal and the caribou. Runic carvings adorn the doorposts of the great hall knot as museum pieces, but as fresh-cut warnings and blessings. This is not a temporary camp. This is a foothold. This is a town named Straumsfjord, the Fjord of Currents, and it has survived its first decade. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Comment where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's step into the world that could have been. You walk through the heart of the settlement, and the dissonance is jarring. The tools, the architecture, the language, it is all fiercely, stubbornly Norse, but the world it inhabits is not. The very ground beneath your feet is different. The birdsong is a new arrangement of notes. The vast, silent forest that presses in on all sides is not the managed woodland of Europe. It is a sprawling, ancient wilderness, teeming with life and dangers your ancestors never imagined. This colony was not supposed to succeed. In our timeline, it didn't. The settlement at Meadows was a fleeting dream, a historical footnote. A handful of explorers led by Leif Erikson, then his brother, then the merchant Thorfinn Karlsefni, tried and failed. They were too few, too far from home, too beset by internal squabbles and hostilities with the native peoples they called, with dismissive contempt, Skrællingar. They came for timber and glory, but found only hardship and death. They packed up and sailed away, leaving Vinland to fade back into saga and myth. But here, the story broke from its track. The divergence point was not a single decision on this side of the Atlantic, but a storm of blood and faith on the other. In the final years of the 10th century, King Olaf Tryggvason of Norway did not just invite his people to Christianity. He forced it upon them with fire and steel. He broke the power of the old gods and the Jarls who worshipped them. In our world, the Jarls bowed, broke, or fled to Iceland and the Orkneys. In this world, a coalition of them did something far more radical. Led by a formidable pagan jarl named Hrafn Eyvindsson, man who saw the future not in fighting a losing battle against the White Christ, but in seizing a new world for the old ways, they did not just flee. They organized an exodus. They gathered their families, their retainers, their shipwrights, their farmers, and their warriors. They pooled their wealth not to fight a king, but to buy a future. 5 longships and 10 heavy-kneed gnars, laden with breeding pairs of cattle, iron blooms, seed grain, and 1,000 souls, made the perilous journey past Iceland, past Greenland, and into the unknown. They were not explorers, they were refugees. They had no home to return to. Failure meant extinction. That desperation is the bedrock of Straumsfjord. It is why the palisade wall is so thick, why the forge glows day and night, and why every man and woman learns to wield both an axe and a spear. In the center of the settlement stands the smithy, its rhythmic hammering the town's very heartbeat. Here, bog iron dredged from the marshlands is transformed into the currency of survival. Nails, axe heads, knives, spear points. This is their single, overwhelming advantage. It is the hard magic that allows them to fell the colossal trees, build their homes, and, when necessary, intimidate their neighbors. And you see those neighbors now. At the edge of the clearing just beyond the palisade, a small group of people watch. They are the Beothuk, the first people of this land. They are silent, their faces unreadable, their clothing made of expertly tanned caribou hide. In their hands are bows and stone-tipped arrows. In our history, they were driven to extinction, a ghost people. Here, they are a present and potent reality. The first encounters were bloody, just as the sagas foretold. Arrogance met fear, and the result was death on both sides. But Hrafn the Farseer, the Jarl who led the Exodus, was a pragmatist above all else. He had not sacrificed everything to die in a pointless war over a patch of coastline. He understood a truth that Thorfinn Karlsefni never did. He needed them. The Norse knew how to survive a Scandinavian winter, but they knew nothing of this land's brutal, snow-choked cold, its plants, its animals, its rhythms. The tension you feel is the result of a decade of uneasy truce. A trade was brokered. Hrafn offered iron. Not swords or spears, was not a fool but knives, hatchets, and needles. Tools that could transform the lives of a Stone Age people. In return, the Beothuk and their Mi'kmaq cousins to the south offered knowledge. They taught the newcomers how to build snowshoes, how to track moose, which berries were poison and which were medicine. They traded rich furs for trinkets of metal. It is a relationship of pure, unsentimental pragmatism. They do not like each other. They do not trust each other. But they need each other. This is not the noble exchange of cultures some might dream of. It is a cold calculus of survival, a constant, low-grade tension that could snap at any moment. You see the paradox playing out in the children. A Norse boy with hair the colour of straw, no older than 7, stands near the open gate of the palisade, holding a small, carved wooden horse. From the tree line, a Beothuk girl of the same age watches him, her dark eyes wide with a mixture of curiosity and fear. For a fleeting moment, they are just children, but they are also the inheritors of 2 vastly different worlds, standing on opposite sides of a divide that is invisible but absolute. The Norse boy's father sees the forest as timber to be felled and land to be cleared. The Beothuk girl's father sees it as the source of all life, a sacred home. There is no easy reconciliation between those 2 views. One must, in the end, yield to the other. The unexpected twist of this new reality is the subtle transformation of the Norse themselves. They fled the centralizing authority of a king, a man who sought to unify Norway under one god and one rule. They came to Vinland seeking frith, the old Norse concept of freedom within a community of kin. Yet, to survive, Hrafn has had to impose an even more rigid order. He is not a king, not yet, but his word is law. Resources are strictly rationed. Every able-bodied person has duties assigned to them by his council. Dissent is not tolerated, because dissent could lead to a fracture, and a fracture would lead to annihilation. In escaping a kingdom, they have been forced to create a new, harsher one. The irony is lost on them, for they are too busy surviving. You climb the watchtower at the southern edge of the settlement. From here, you can see the whole picture. The orderly cluster of longhouses, the carefully tended plots of barley and oats struggling in the thin soil, the small herd of shaggy cattle lowing in their pen. Beyond the walls, the infinite, intimidating green of the continent stretches away to the west, and to the east, the vast, empty grey of the Atlantic. Hrafn the Far-Seer stands beside you, his gaze fixed on that eastern horizon. He is older now, his beard streaked with grey, his face a map of worries. He knows that the supply ships from Greenland, once a lifeline, have become less and less frequent. The colony there is weakening, the climate slowly turning against it. The umbilical cord to the old world is fraying. Soon, it will snap. He turns his gaze from the sea and looks west, towards the heart of the continent. He knows there is no going back. The ships that carried them here have been dismantled, their wood repurposed for the Great Hall and the docks. They have burned their boats. This is not a chapter in the history of Norway. It is the first sentence in the history of something entirely new. Their future lies not in memory, but in Conquestoff, the land of its people and of their own fears. The Longhouse coast is secure, for now, but it is just the beginning. The real story of this new world begins when they take their first steps inland. The year is 1085. You are not a farmer huddled by the coast anymore. You are an explorer, a scout, a man whose name, Bjarni, is spoken with respect in the growing councils of Markland, the land of forests. Your grandfather was Hrafn the Far-Seer, the man who led the Exodus. His blood runs in your veins, but his world is a memory. You were born on this continent. The cry of the loon is more familiar to you than the bleating of a European sheep. You have never seen Norway. You are leading a party of 10 men, pushing your shallow draft riverboat up a wide, slow-moving waterway that the natives call the Kania Tarowaneneth Big Waterway. You call it the Elgar, the Elk River. In our world, it is the St. Lawrence. For 3 weeks, you have paddled and rowed west, deeper into the continental interior than any of your people have gone before. The land here is different. The soil is richer, the trees are taller, the air is warmer. It is a paradise waiting for the plough, and it is utterly, terrifyingly empty. This is the dissonance that has haunted your journey. The land shows every sign of having been recently and densely inhabited. You pass villages every few miles. Longhouses, far larger than your own, built of elm bark, stretched over sturdy frames. Pottery shards litter the ground, decorated with intricate geometric patterns. You see the faint outlines of immense fields, now overgrown with weeds and saplings, that once must have fed thousands. The evidence of a thriving people is everywhere. The people themselves are nowhere. There are no signs of war, no burned villages, no shattered skulls, no palisades breached by axes. It is something far more chilling. You step into a longhouse and find woven mats still on the sleeping platforms. A clay pot, filled with dried beans, sits beside a cold fire pit. In one you found the skeleton of a woman lying on her bed, a tiny skeleton of an infant cradled in her arms. They had not been killed. They had simply stopped. This is the legacy of the Whispering Plague. It did not arrive like the Black Death of a later European century, a storm that raged and then passed. It was a slow, creeping sickness that first appeared in your grandfather's time, a generation after landfall. It began with the children in Stromsfjord and the other coastal settlements. A fever, a cough, a rash of red spots. The Norse called it barnesot, the childhood disease. It was unpleasant, sometimes fatal to the very young or very old, but most recovered. It was a known part of life, a toll paid to the Norns in the first few years of existence. Your people had lived with it for centuries, but when it jumped from your settlements to the native peoples, it became something else entirely. For them, it was not barnesot, it was a demon. It came on the winter wind, carried by an unlucky trade, a stolen glance, a shared drinking gourd. A Mi'kmaq trader would visit the coast, barter his furs for an iron knife, and carry home not just the tool, but a passenger in his lungs. 2 weeks later, he would develop a fever, then the cough, then his entire village. You saw its work firsthand a week ago. You found a man, delirious and dying, in a makeshift shelter by the river. He was old, his face a mask of terror and grief. He was from a people you now know as the Haudenosaunee. Your party's translator, a woman named Astrid who was raised among the Micmac, managed to understand his broken words. He did not speak of warriors or invaders. He spoke of a curse, the coughing death. He said it had swept through his village a season ago. It killed the young and the old first. It left the strong gasping for air, their skin on fire, their spirits broken. He was the only survivor from a village of 300. He told you that the sickness had a smell, the faint, sour smell of penned cattle. He died before the sunset. You buried him according to your rites, because you did not know his. You said a prayer to the White Christ, whose faith was beginning to blend with the old ways, asking for his soul to find peace. But you also left a piece of iron in his grave, an old pagan custom to keep the spirit from wandering. This is the great, unspoken truth of your people's success. It is not your iron, not your longships, not your god. It is your germs. Measles, influenza, tuberculosis, diseases born from 1,000 years of Europeans living in close quarters with domesticated animals. Your bodies are walking archives of immunities that the people of this continent, in their millennia of splendid isolation, never had the chance to develop. The tragic irony is your own profound ignorance. You and your men do not understand the mechanics of contagion. You see the empty land not as a tragedy, but as a divine providence. You are a devout man, in your own syncretic way. You see this emptiness as a sign. God or the gods have cleared this paradise for you. They have judged the Skralinggar unworthy and swept them aside. You feel a pang of pity, yes, but it is overshadowed by a sense of destiny. This land was promised. This land is now yours for the taking. This belief system is hardening into a kind of religious doctrine back on the coast. The priests Sa, strange blend of Norse Gothy and Christian missionary, preach that the plagues are God's breath, chasing the faithless from the new Eden. They are not entirely wrong. It is a breath aerosolized viral particles from a cough or a sneeze. But to you, it is a miracle. A dark, terrible, and profoundly convenient miracle. You are creating a power vacuum, not a conquest. You are not fighting for land, you are inheriting it. Your expansion is not a bloody march, but a slow, inexorable flow into the spaces left by the dead. This changes everything. It changes your psychology. You are not conquistadors, driven by greed and a lust for glory. You see yourselves as pioneers, survivors, colonists bringing order to a chaotic and cursed wilderness. The ethical dimension of your expansion is erased by your own lack of understanding. How can you be guilty of a crime you don't even know you are committing? The paradox is that this slow-motion apocalypse fosters a strange kind of dependence. The native communities are not wiped out completely. Not yet. They are shattered. A village of 500 becomes a group of 50 traumatized survivors. They lose their elders, their lawkeepers, their political leaders, their social structures collapse. And in their desperation, some of them turn to the only source of power and stability they can find. You. They come to your settlements, seeking refuge, food, and the strange, hard magic of your iron. They become your clients, your subjects, your lowest class of laborers. They are not slaves, not in the way the Romans had slaves. They are broken people, clinging to the very civilization that, unknowingly, destroyed theirs. Your party makes camp for the night at the confluence of the Elgar and a smaller, faster river. As you sit by the fire, You carve a rune into a piece of driftwood. Fehu, the rune of wealth, of cattle, of new beginnings. You look out over the dark water, towards the west. You can feel the sheer, overwhelming scale of the continent. It pulls you forward. You will return to the coast and tell the Law Council of this empty, fertile land. You will report that the way is clear. Within a generation, new settlements will rise here. They will be called Granalunda, Green Grove, and Cornaca, Cornfield. Long houses will be built. Fields will be ploughed. Cattle will graze on the ghosts of Haudenosaunee fields. A new wave of the whispering plague will radiate out from these settlements. Another silent, invisible wave of death rolling west into the heart of the continent. You are a good man, Bjarni Hrafnsson. You are brave, pious, and fair to your people. You are also the unwitting agent of a demographic catastrophe on a scale unseen in human history. You are the harbinger of an apocalypse that arrives not with a bang, but with a whisper. And you will die an old man, celebrated as a founder and a hero, never once understanding the true nature of the world you helped to build upon the bones of the world you erased. The year is 1150. You are standing in the middle of a bustling marketplace in a town called Hop, situated where a wide river meets the Great Salt Bay. In our world, this would be the rough location of Quebec City. But there is no walled citadel here, no grand chateau. Instead, a sprawling, chaotic, and vibrant trading town spreads along the riverbank. Longhouses of Norse design stand next to dome-shaped wigwams of Algonquian construction. The smell of smoked fish and curing hides mingles with the sharp tang of the forge and the earthy scent of corn porridge. The language you hear is a Creole, a fluid mix of Old Norse and Mi'kmaq that is becoming the lingua franca of the entire coast. You are a woman named Skuld. Your father was a Norse shipwright from Stromsfjord. Your mother, a Mi'kmaq healer from a village decimated by the second wave of the coughing death. You are a living embodiment of the new culture taking root in this soil, the Iron-Wampum culture. Your name is Norse, from the Norn who decides the future, but on a leather cord around your neck, you wear a small, polished gorget of shell, a wampum piece carved with the symbol of your mother's clan. You are comfortable with an axe, but you also know the secret language of the forest. The medicinal properties of plants your father's people would dismiss as weeds. This world is not one of simple conquest and subjugation. The whispering plague created a vacuum, but it did not scour the land clean. Instead, it shattered the existing power structures, forcing the survivors into new, often desperate, alliances. For the Algonquian peoples, the Mi'kmaq, the Abenaki, the Inutha, choice was stark. Fade into extinction or engage with the strange, bearded newcomers. They chose engagement. The result is a messy, complex, and deeply intertwined society. You see it all around you in the market. A Norse blacksmith, his arms thick with muscle, haggles with an Abenaki hunter. The blacksmith is trading an iron spearhead. The hunter is not offering furs, but a string of wampum beads. In our timeline, wampum was a medium of ceremony and record-keeping. Here, it has become something more. Because the Norse were cut off from European silver and gold, and the natives had no use for it, they needed a new currency. They found it in the sacred shells of the quahog clam. The iron-wampum trade is the engine of this new economy. Iron tools, pots, and weapons flow out from the Norse settlements. Wampum, furs, specialized knowledge, and crucially, people flow in. This brings you to the most unsettling aspect of your world. You see a group of men and women being led onto a Norse nar, docked at the wharf. They are not Algonquian. They are from a people far to the west, captured in a raid by a Mi'kmaq war party, and traded here in Hop. They are prisoners of war, and they have been sold into a form of indentured servitude to a Norse landholder. It is not chattel slavery in the way the later Atlantic trade would define it. They have rights, their children will be born free, and their servitude has a term, usually 7 years, but it is bondage nonetheless. The ethical dilemma of this world is acute. The Norse did not introduce slavery to this continent. Tribal warfare and the taking of captives for adoption or servitude was a part of life for many indigenous groups. But the Norse, with their demand for labour to clear the vast, empty lands, have commercialised and scaled it. The Mi'kmaq and Abenaki war parties, now armed with Norse iron axes and arrowheads, are becoming more powerful and more aggressive. They are not just fighting for territory or honour anymore. They are fighting for wampum and the goods it can buy. They are becoming slave raiders, preying on their still uncontacted neighbours to the south and west. The Norse, for their part, can maintain a veneer of moral cleanliness. They are not the ones raiding the villages. They are just the end consumers in a supply chain of human misery. They have outsourced the violence. The culture evolving here is a true hybrid. You walk past the Gothi's hall. The priest is an old Norseman, but his vestments are trimmed with porcupine quills, and the cross on the altar is flanked by carvings of a raven and a wolf, honouring Odin's companions alongside the Christian god. The stories he tells are from the Gospels, but he illustrates them with parables from Algonquian folklore. This syncretism is happening organically, not as a matter of policy, but as a matter of reality. The Norse are a minority, and to survive and thrive, they must adapt. They have been cut off from the theological debates of Europe for over a century. Their faith is becoming as American as the soil it has been transplanted into. The paradox of the Iron-Wampum culture is its simultaneous fusion and segregation. In the town of Hop, Norse and native live side by side. Intermarriage, like that of your parents, is common. Children like you, the Blandin, the mixed bloods, are becoming a new class, often acting as translators, traders and diplomats. They are the glue holding this fragile society together. But just a few miles upriver, on the rich lands cleared of their original inhabitants by the plague, you will find the great Norse landnam, the homesteads. Here, life is far more segregated. A powerful Norse jarl rules over a vast tract of land, worked by his extended family, his retainers, and his indentured native servants. These are patriarchal, conservative, and fiercely independent domains. They see the chaotic mixing in the trading towns as a sign of weakness and impurity. A deep social stratification is emerging. The Norseland, owning elite, the mixed blood merchant class, the allied and partially integrated native groups like the Mi'kmaq, and at the very bottom, the indentured captives from the interior. The unexpected twist is the reversal of technological and ecological knowledge. The Norse brought iron, but they are desperately adopting native technology to survive and expand. You see it everywhere. Their river-going ships are now built more like native canoes, with shallow drafts and lightweight frames. They wear moccasins in the forest, not heavy leather boots. They have adopted the snowshoe, without which winter travel would be impossible. They have learned to grow the three sisters, corn, beans and squash, which thrive in this climate far better than their ancestral barley and rye. A Norse farmer's field is now a patchwork of European and American crops. Ecologically, the natives are colonizing the Norse. You, Skald, are a master of this new world. You can negotiate a trade for iron axe heads in the morning, then track a deer through the deep woods in the afternoon. You can recite a Norse saga and also tell the story of Glooskap, the great culture hero of your mother's people. But you are also caught in the middle. The old Norse jarls look at your mixed heritage with suspicion. The more traditionalist members of your mother's tribe see you as a collaborator, a part of the system that is destroying their old ways. As evening falls, You sit by the river, polishing the wampum gorget around your neck. You watch the Norse ships and the native canoes share the same waters. The Iron-Wampum culture is strong, vibrant, and expanding. It is a unique fusion, a new civilization born of desperation, disease, and pragmatism. But it is built on a foundation of demographic catastrophe and a system of enforced labor that is growing more entrenched with every passing year. It is a culture of immense promise and profound unseen sin, and you are its child, a harbinger of a future that will be neither Norse nor native, but something entirely, unpredictably new. The year is 1221. You are standing in the great timber hall of Hrafsvik, the new capital of the Norse American settlements, built on a commanding bluff overlooking the Elgar River. This is the heart of Markland. The hall is immense, the roof held up by entire tree trunks, each one carved from floor to ceiling with a sprawling, intricate tapestry of runes and images. It is not a story of gods and heroes from the Eddas. It is your story. It is the history of the crossing, the starvation winters, the first trade with the Beathuk, the mapping of the great rivers. It is the saga of a new people. You are Eric Thorson, the law speaker for the Althing, the General Assembly of all free landholders in Markland. Your role is ancient, brought over from Iceland, but the body you serve is radically new. Today is a day that will be carved into this hall for centuries to come. Today, you will declare a king. For 200 years, Markland has been a loose confederation of settlements and homesteads, governed by a council of powerful jarls. They were bound by custom, trade, and the ever-present threat of the unknown continent at their backs. But that is no longer enough. The world has grown too large, too complex. The Whispering Plague has done its work, clearing a vast corridor of land up the Elgar and into the great interior lakes. The population of Markland, swelled by generations of healthy births and a steady trickle of refugees from a cooling, failing Greenland, is now nearly 50,000 strong. The Iron-Wampum trade network extends for 1,000 miles. New challenges have arisen that the old ways cannot handle. The catalyst for this change was the Birch Bark War of 1215, a dispute over trapping rights between a powerful Norse jarl and an allied Abenaki chieftain escalated into a brutal year-long conflict that nearly shattered the fragile peace. It revealed a critical weakness. There was no central authority to mediate, to enforce treaties, to command a unified army. Each jarl fought for himself. The confederation was a rope of sand. After the war, a call went out to all the jarls, the landowners, and, in a radical departure from Norse tradition, representatives from the allied native tribes the Mi'kmaq and Abenaki, who were now inseparable from the Marklandic economy and military. They met for a full year, debating, arguing, and drinking immense quantities of mead and corn beer. You, as law speaker, were the moderator of this great council. The tension was between two powerful ideas. The old guard, the powerful landed jarls, wanted to maintain the system of independent homesteads. They cherished their freedom, the frith their ancestors had crossed an ocean to preserve. They saw a king as a return to the tyranny they had fled in Norway. The other faction, the merchants, the explorers, the mixed-blood Blandin, and the allied native chiefs, argued for centralization. They saw the bigger picture. They knew that to the west lay powerful, untouched native confederacies. They knew that the supply chain of indentured servants was causing increasing conflict on their borders, and a few, the most far-sighted, worried about the sea. It had been nearly a century since the last ship from Europe had arrived, but they knew a whole world was out there. What if it decided to come looking for them? They needed a single voice, a single sword. The resolution, which you will announce today, is a masterpiece of political compromise, a document that that could only have been born in this specific place and time. It is the Great Covenant of Markland. It establishes a kingdom, but a kingdom unlike any in Europe. You stand now before the assembled council. The hall is packed. Bearded Norse jarls in wool and leather stand next to Algonquian sachems in beaded hides and feathers. The air is thick with anticipation. You unroll a great scroll of cured caribou hide, its surface covered in a combination of runic script and pictographic symbols, so that it can be read by both cultures. By the will of the Althing, your voice booms, echoing in the rafters, we declare that Markland shall be one realm, under one leader. We name this leader not Kanunga, the king by birth, but Herjarl, the war leader, chosen from among us. This is the first compromise. The title is not inherited, it is elective. The Herjarl will be chosen by this very council, the Althing, and will serve for life, but his son will not automatically inherit. He must be chosen anew. This satisfies the Jarl's fear of a hereditary monarchy. The Herjarl shall command the armies of Markland, shall be the final judge in disputes between Jarls, and shall speak for all of us in dealings with foreign peoples. You continue. But his power shall be bound by the law. He cannot make war, levy taxes, or grant land without the consent of the Law Council. This is the second and more radical innovation. The Law Council will be made up of 12 members, 6 chosen from the Norse Jarls and 6 chosen from the sachems of the allied tribes. This is the influence of the Haudenosaunee and other Algonquian political traditions, which are built on consensus and council-based governance. The native representatives, who began this process as junior partners, have just been enshrined into the very heart of the new government. It is a stunning act of political integration, born of pure necessity. The Norse need their warriors, their scouts, their knowledge. The natives need the Norse iron and political stability. The paradox is profound. The Norse fled a homogenizing king in Europe, only to create a hybrid, multi-ethnic, elective monarchy in America. They are building a state that is both more traditional and more progressive than anything in the Old World. It is a feudal system in its structure of land ownership and fealty, yet it is almost a republic in its mechanisms of election and consent. The man they have chosen as the first Herjarl stands beside you. He is Olav Einarsson, a veteran of the Birchbark War. He is a pure-blood Norseman, but he was fostered for a time with the Mi'kmaq. He speaks their language fluently and respects their ways. He is a warrior, but also a diplomat. He embodies the compromise. Now comes the unexpected twist. As part of the ceremony, Olav is presented with the symbols of his office. The first is a great iron axe, its haft wrapped in sealskin, a symbol of Norse power. The second is a gift from the native sachems. It is a great feathered headdress, a mark of supreme leadership in their culture. Olav first hefts the axe, a nod to his own people. Then, in a gesture that silences the entire hall, he bows his head and allows the eldest sachem to place the feathered crown upon it. A Norse king crowned with an Indian headdress. In this moment, the Kingdom of Markland is truly born. This act creates a new shared identity. The iconography of the new kingdom will not be just runes and longships. It will be the axe and the feather, the raven and the turtle. The children born from this day forward will not see themselves as Norsemen living in a new land. They will see themselves as Marklendingar, a new people forged from 2 old worlds. But you, as the law speaker, see the ethical minefield that lies ahead. This new, unified state will be far more efficient. It will be better at making war, better at organizing the expansion westward, better at managing the flow of trade and resources. It will also be better at rationalizing the system of indentured servitude that underpins its economy. The Great Covenant speaks of the rights of free landholders and allied peoples. It is silent on the thousands of captive thralls working the fields. By formalizing the state, you have also formalized their exclusion. As the cheers echo through the great hall, you look at the faces in the crowd. Hope, pride, ambition, but also fear and uncertainty. The creation of this kingdom is not an end. It is a beginning. It is the moment a loose collection of survivors becomes a power. And power, is a hungry thing. The Kingdom of Markland is now a real player on the continental stage. And soon, it will have to face the other powers stirring in the vastness of the West. The year is 1301. You are kneeling on a bed of soft moss in a clearing deep within the forests of what our world would call Maine. The clearing is dominated by a single immense white pine. Its branches so vast, they seem to hold up the sky. At the base of the tree is a simple stone altar. A shaft of morning light cuts through the canopy, illuminating a figure standing before it. He is Father Thrain, the local priest. His face is a roadmap of wrinkles, his beard long and white. He wears a robe of undyed wool, but embroidered on it in beads and porcupine quills is the image of a great stag. He raises his hands to the sky and begins to speak, his voice a low, resonant chant. The words are a strange blend of Latin, Old Norse, and Algonquian. He is not praying to the distant, patriarchal god of Rome. He is speaking to Hivitakrista Skogurins, the white Christ of the forest. You are a young woman named Solveig. You have come here for the spring planting ceremony. In your hands, you hold a small deerskin pouch filled with seed corn, squash, and rye. You are here to have them blessed. Father Thrain takes the pouch, makes the sign of the cross over it, then dips his fingers into a wooden bowl of water drawn from a sacred spring. But as he sprinkles the water, he does not invoke the name of a forgotten Roman martyr. He invokes the name of Saint Kateri, the first of the native people to be martyred by a rival tribe for her faith, and Saint Brendan the Navigator, who in the lore of this faith is said to have reached these shores long before the Norse. This is the faith of Markland. It is Christianity, yes, but a Christianity that has been cut off from its European root for 300 years and has grown into the soil of a new continent, drawing sustenance from the spiritual beliefs it encountered there. This is not the result of a council or a decree. It is a slow, organic blending that has happened in thousands of isolated homesteads and villages like yours. A faith shaped by the lived reality of the world around you. The divergence began with the first Norse settlers. They were Christians, but only recently. Their faith was a thin veneer over a deep well of pagan belief. They still saw the world as a place alive with spirits Landvatir in the land, Sjovatir in the sea. They were primed to see the divine in the natural world. When they came to North America, they found peoples whose entire cosmology was based on that very idea. For the Algonquian peoples, every tree, every river, every animal possessed a spirit, a Manitou. The world was a sacred, interconnected web of life. A hunter did not simply kill a deer. He asked the deer's spirit for permission and gave thanks for its sacrifice. Over generations of intermarriage, trade, and shared existence, these two worldviews did not collide. They bled into one another. The Norse concept of Landvatir found a natural partner in the Algonquian concept of Manitou. The Old Norse gods, already demoted to the status of legends and folk heroes, found new life. Thor was not the enemy of Christ. He became an archangel, a thunderous spirit, who battled the frost giants of the north. Odin the Wanderer, the seeker of knowledge, became a kind of patron saint of explorers and rune carvers. The figure of Christ himself underwent the most profound transformation. The distant, celestial king of European feudalism had little resonance for people whose lives were dictated by the seasons, the hunt, and the harvest. their Christ became a figure of the wilderness. He was born not in a stable, but in a winter lodge. He fasted for 40 days, not in the desert, but in the deep forest. His apostles were not fishermen of the Galilee, but hunters and canoemen. The crucifixion was still central, but it was seen through a different lens. The forest Christ did not die for an abstract, original sin. He died as a sacrifice to the Great Spirit, Kitchi Manitou, to restore balance to a wounded world, just as a hunter sacrifices tobacco to the spirit of the animal he has taken. This new faith created a unique ethical framework. The deadly sin in this theology is not pride or lust, it is waste. To fell a forest without need, to take more fish than a community can eat, to kill an animal for sport, these are not just improvident acts. They are profound sins against the Creator Spirit who infused the world with life. This has created a deep-seated, almost unconscious conservationist ethic in Marklandic culture. Your people are not modern environmentalists. They are farmers and hunters who need to use the land. But they do so with a sense of reciprocity and reverence that was utterly alien to the European mindset of domination over nature. The paradox of this faith is its simultaneous gentleness and ferocity. Towards the natural world, it preaches a gospel of balance and respect. But towards outsiders who do not share this view, it can be deeply intolerant. Other native tribes who still practice the old ways are seen not just as rivals, but as pagans living in darkness, blind to the true nature of the Great Spirit. And the idea of the European Christians, with their distant pope and their saints who lived in deserts and cities, is viewed with suspicion and hostility. They are seen as people who have forgotten that God lives in the world, not just in stone churches. You see this tension in Father Thrain himself. He is a man of deep kindness and wisdom. He knows the healing properties of 100 different plants. His sermons are about the sacredness of life. But last year, when a band of raiders from an uncontacted tribe to the west attacked a nearby homestead, he was the first to pick up an axe and join the pursuit. He blessed the warriors of the village, calling on the spirit of the archangel Tirthi, old Norse god of war, to guide their blades. His faith is one of peace with creation, but war with those who would disrupt its sacred order. The unexpected twist is how this American Christianity preserves elements of its pagan Norse past more effectively than the pagan revivals in Iceland. Back in the Old World, the pressure from a centralized, powerful Roman Church eventually scrubbed away most traces of the old gods. Here, isolated and syncretizing, the old ways found a refuge inside the new religion. The runic alphabet is not seen as a pagan relic. It is a sacred script, used to write holy texts alongside the Latin alphabet, brought by the first missionaries. The great seasonal festivals of the Norse Yule and Midsummer Air seamlessly blended with Christmas and the feast of John the Baptist, celebrated with bonfires and sacred groves that would have horrified a Roman bishop. As the ceremony ends, Father Thrain gives you back your seeds. He places his hand on your head and gives you a blessing. May the All-Father bless this soil, may the forest Christ grant you a rich harvest, and may the spirit of the land look kindly upon you. All-Father, Christ, Land Spirit. One prayer, 3 traditions woven into a single chord. You walk back to your family's homestead, the blessed pouch of seeds held tightly in your hand. Your faith is not a matter of abstract theology. It is a practical guide to living in this world. It tells you how to plant, when to hunt, and why you must respect the forest that surrounds you. It is a faith that smells of pine needles, wood smoke, and damp earth. It is utterly heretical by the standards of Rome or Constantinople. But here, in the green heart of Markland, it is the one and only truth. And it is a truth for which your people will, one day, be willing to kill and die. The year is 1000, 345. The world, for you, is water. Not the violent, salt-scarred grey of the great encircling sea your ancestors crossed, but a vast, placid, and incomprehensible expanse of blue. You stand at the prow of your ship, the Skogarulfreth, the forest wolfand. You can see no land on the horizon. The sun is hot, the wind is steady, but the water beneath you is sweet to the taste. It is a profound violation of everything your mariner's soul knows to be true. You are Leif Bjarkason, and you are an elog-farer, a moose-farer. It is a new calling, a new kind of man bred in Markland. You are not a farmer, tied to the soil. You are not a jarl, bound by politics. You are the tip of the kingdom's spear, the man who goes first. Your mission, given to you by the fourth Herjarl of Markland himself, is to push beyond the rapids that blocked the Elgar River and to map the great inland seas that the Algonquian storytellers spoke of in hushed, reverent tones. The ship beneath your feet is a testament to that mission. She is not a true Drakkar, no more than you are a true Norwegian. The Skogarulfa is longer and leaner than a coastal Gnar, but her hull is a clever compromise. She has the high, proud prow of a Viking longship, carved into the shape of a wolf's head, but her bottom is nearly flat. Her keel is shallow, designed to navigate treacherous rivers and to be beached on a sandy shore at a moment's notice. She is built not of heavy Norwegian oak, but of white cedar and ash from the great forests, making her impossibly light for her size. She is a product of 300 years of adaptation, a vessel that is part Norse longship, part Algonquian canoe. She is a creature of two worlds, just like you. You have been on this journey for 2 seasons. You and your crew of 40 elog-farers pushed past the thundering falls the Cascades you named Thunderfoss in honour of the old god Thorby undertaking the back-breaking labour of a portage, a technique learned from your native allies. For 3 weeks, you rolled your ship on logs through a cleared path in the forest, a feat of engineering and raw muscle that would have been unthinkable to your seagoing ancestors. And your reward was this: the Great Lakes. The first you named Eriavatnen, Eric's Lake, after the first man to see Vinland. The second you called Huravatn, for the shaggy coats of the bison you saw grazing on its shores. And now you are here, on the largest of them all, a body of water, so immense the natives call it Misigani, the Great Water. You have adopted their name, for no Norse word seems adequate. This exploration is not an act of romantic adventure. It is state policy. The Kingdom of Markland is hungry. Its population is booming. Its forests near the coast are being depleted for fuel and timber, and its appetite for furs and, more importantly, copper is insatiable. The native peoples of the lakes wore ornaments of pure beaten copper, a metal the Norse prized for its beauty and utility, but had never found in great quantities. Your mission is to find the source. You are a prospector as much as an explorer. You are also an agent of control. The trade in Western captives that fueled the coastal economy for a century has become a source of instability, sparking brutal wars on Markland's frontier. The Herjarl wants to know where these people are coming from. He wants to bypass the native middlemen and control the network from its source. You are seeking not just rivers and minerals, but the wellspring of the kingdom's labour supply. This is the great paradox of your work. You and your men are charting the unknown, performing feats of incredible bravery and endurance. You are driven by a fierce pride in your kingdom and your unique culture. In the evenings you sing the sagas of the Forest Christ and carve runes on the paddles of your canoes. You see yourselves as bringing light into the darkness, imposing the order of Markland on a chaotic wilderness. But the light you bring casts a long, dark shadow. Everywhere you go, you are the harbinger. The whispering plague preceded you, but it was a wildfire. You are the plough that follows, turning the soil for a new kind of planting. You establish small, fortified trading posts at strategic river mouths and portages. These are the seeds of future cities. At the choke point between Eriavatn and Huravatn, you founded a settlement you called Vatnsvik, the Bay of Waters. In our world, it is the future site of Detroit. On the southern shore of Misigani, where a river winds inland through rich prairie, you built a stockade and named it Cornelant, the Cornland. It is the beginning of Chicago. These are not yet cities. They are lonely outposts, a few dozen men holding a tiny flicker of Markland's authority against an immense wilderness. But they are nodes in a network. You have not just discovered a new territory, you have created a new artery. The Lake Drakkars, like yours, will soon ply these waters regularly, carrying iron goods west and returning with copper, corn and furs. You have pulled the heart of the continent into the economic orbit of the Atlantic coast. The unexpected twist of your journey is not what you find, but who you find. Far to the north, on a great island in the lake the natives call Jichigami, Lake Superior, you find the copper. It is not in veins deep in the earth. It is lying on the surface, in pure, massive nuggets. The local people, a branch of the Anishinaabe, treat the island as sacred ground. They do not mine the copper, they are its guardians. You initiate a trade. For the first time, a steady, industrial supply of copper flows back east, changing the economy of Markland forever. Bronze, once a rarity, will become common. A new age of metalworking is about to begin. The ethical dilemma comes to a head when you reach the far southern end of Misigani. Following a river inland, you encounter a people unlike any you have met before. They are not Algonquian. Their language is different, their pottery is more refined, and their society seems more complex. They are the last remnants of a culture that was devastated by a plague generations ago. They are farmers, living in small, scattered villages. They are also terrified of you. They have heard stories. They know what follows the arrival of the bearded men in their strange ships. Their shaman meets you with a mixture of awe and dread. You follow the protocols of the Herjal. You offer gifts. You trade iron for corn. You do not threaten them. But as you sit in their council lodge, sharing smoked fish, you are also assessing them. You are mapping their villages, estimating their strength, noting the richness of their soil. You are a diplomat, but your diplomacy is the cutting edge of an empire. You know that the land grants will follow your maps. The homesteaders will follow the land grants. The priests will follow the homesteaders. You are offering peace, but you are promising oblivion. And then comes the final, world-altering revelation. From these people, you hear stories, not of small tribes and scattered villages, but of a great power to the south. A kingdom built along the banks of the Mississippi, the father of waters. They speak of a Sunday king, a priest chief who rules from the top of a man-made mountain of earth. They talk of a city with 1,000 longhouses, surrounded by a mighty wall of wood. They call this city Cahokia. Suddenly, your mission changes. The continent is not a wilderness to be tamed. It is not empty. Your slow westward expansion has just run up against something of equal, or perhaps greater, power. The stories of a Sunday kingdom are at first dismissed by your men as fanciful legends, but as you gather more accounts, a consistent and terrifying picture emerges. You stand on the shore of Misigani, the sweet water lapping at your feet. You look south, across the rolling prairies. You came west, seeking copper and furs, the edge of the known world. Instead, you have found a border. For the first time, the Marklandingar are not the only complex society in the region. There is another, a powerful, organized, pyramid-building civilization. The Elog-farers have done their job too well. They have connected the burgeoning Kingdom of Markland with the ancient empire of the Mississippi. The long, slow story of colonization is over. A new story of competing empires and the clash of civilizations is about to begin. The year is 1491. You are standing on the bleached white deck of the Santa Maria, and the air is thick with the scent of salt, rot, and a sweet alien perfume of unknown blossoms. Your name is Cristoforo Colombo, a Genoese captain in the service of the Spanish crown. And after 33 days of staring at an empty horizon, you have just found land. It is exactly as you imagined it. A green jewel set in a turquoise sea. The men are weeping, cheering, falling to their knees to thank God. You feel a profound, soul-shaking sense of vindication. You have done it. You have reached the outer isles of the Indies by sailing west. You have proven the world is smaller, the ocean is crossable, and that your destiny is as grand as you always believed. You are rowed ashore to a small island the natives call Guanahani. You plant the royal standard of Castile and Aragon in the sand, claiming this land for your patrons and for all of Christendom. The native people, the Taino, emerge from the trees. They are gentle, curious, and just as the stories of Marco Polo describe the simplest island as snaked, artless, and living in a state of primitive grace, they are a blank slate upon which you will write the glory of Spain and the word of God. This is the moment your world, the world you have meticulously planned and prayed for, begins to unravel. A trade begins. Your men offer hawks' bells and red caps. The Taino offer parrots, cotton thread and spears. It is all going according to the script in your head. Then, one of your men, a grizzled sailor named Rodrigo, lets out a sharp cry, not of fear, but of pure, dumbfounded shock. He is pointing at the Taino chieftain. The chieftain, a man of quiet dignity, is wearing a simple loincloth and a necklace of shells. But tucked into his waistband is a knife. It is not a shard of obsidian or a sharpened bone. The hilt is rough-hewn wood, but the blade is a dull grey metal. It is pitted and crudely shaped, but it is unmistakably iron. You stride forward, your heart suddenly hammering against your ribs. You ask, through gestures and the few words you've managed to learn, where he got it. He does not point east, towards the sea you just crossed. He points north. He uses a word you don't understand, repeating it with a kind of fearful respect. Markland. This is the first crack in the foundation of your reality. Iron does not grow on trees. It does not wash up on beaches. It is the signature of a complex civilization, one with furnaces, forges and mines. It is the mark of the old world, and it is here. The rest of your journey through these islands is a fever dream of cognitive dissonance. You are searching for the grand cities of Cathay, for the gold-roofed palaces of Sipangu. Instead, you find more Taino and Carib villages. But the anomaly persists. The further north you sail, along the coasts of what you name Juana and Hispaniola, the more common the iron becomes. Not just knives, but hatchet heads, fishing hooks, needles. It is all of poor quality compared to Spanish steel, but it is infinitely superior to anything these people should possess. They are not savages. They are the impoverished downstream customers of a vast, unseen trade network. They tell you garbled stories, passed down through generations, tales of pale, bearded men who came from the frozen north generations ago, men who sailed in ships with dragon heads, who worshipped a god who was nailed to a tree, but who also lived in the trees. They are described not as gods, but as powerful warlike traders who exchanged this sky metal for shells, pearls, and captives. You do not find gold. You find a mystery that is far more valuable and infinitely more dangerous. You turn your ships for home not as the triumphant discoverer of a new route to the Indies, but as the bearer of world-shattering news. You stand before Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand in the Alcazar of Córdoba. The court is assembled, hungry for tales of gold and spices. You have none. You unroll a piece of sailcloth onto the polished floor. On it, you do not place gleaming nuggets or chests of pepper. You place a handful of crude iron knives, a rusty axe head, and a strange necklace of polished shells, the islanders called wampum. You also present 2 Taino natives, who stare in terror at the vaulted ceilings. Then, you tell your story, and as you speak, a silence falls over the hall. It is not the silence of disappointment, it is the silence of profound, strategic shock. The court theologians, the military advisors, the shrewd Aragonese ministers, they understand the implications far faster than you did on that sunny beach. The world you have found is not new. It is merely lost. The whispers start immediately. Lost tribes of Israel, a forgotten Christian kingdom founded by St. Thomas, as the legends claimed. The discussion moves from commerce to theology. The right of the Spanish crown to claim these lands, a right they intended to secure from Pope Alexander VI, was predicated on the doctrine of terra nullius empty landand, the sacred duty of bringing the gospel to the heathens. But what if the people there are not heathens? What if they are Christians? The Taino are questioned by priests. Their garbled accounts of a tree god and bearded men from the north are dissected. The conclusion is swift and terrifying. This is not a recognized sect. This is not Nestorian or Coptic or anything known to the church. It is a heresy, a bizarre, nature-worshipping corruption of the faith. The entire paradigm of discovery collapses. This is not a mission of conversion. It is a problem of reunification or purification. The Pope cannot grant Spain the right to conquer fellow Christians, even heretical ones. To do so would be to invite a holy war, not against Muslims or pagans, but against a lost and errant branch of the faith. It would set a precedent that could shatter Christendom. This is the great, ironic twist of your life, Cristoforo. In our world, your discovery opened the floodgates of conquest. In this world, your discovery closes them. You, the ambitious dreamer, have become the agent of caution. Your report does not inspire armadas of conquistadors. It inspires a commission of theologians from the University of Salamanca and a flurry of secret diplomatic correspondence with the Vatican. The tension becomes a frantic, high-stakes race for legitimacy. Spain's goal is no longer to conquer the New World, but to define it in a way that allows for its eventual absorption. They must prove to the Pope that the Kingdom of Markland is a dangerous, blasphemous heresy that threatens the souls of its inhabitants. They need a papal bull not of donation, but of condemnation. They need to declare a crusade, not a conquest. The ethical calculus is inverted. In our timeline, the question was whether the indigenous people had souls. In this timeline, the question is whether the Marklendingar have the right kind of soul. The debate is not about humanity, but about orthodoxy. Your second voyage is not a fleet of colonists and soldiers. It is a carefully selected team of priests, scholars, diplomats, and spies, led by a stern Dominican inquisitor named Tomás de Torquemada, who sees in the tales of a forest Christ the sulphurous stench of diabolical deception. Your mission is not to establish a colony, but to make contact, to travel north, to find this Kingdom of Markland, and to bring back the intelligence, theological, military, economic, that will allow Spain to win the real battle, the one that will be fought not on the beaches of the Caribbean, but in the corridors of the Vatican. You, Cristoforo Colombo, have not discovered a new world. You have rediscovered an old problem, a rival, a Christian one. You have knocked on the door of a house you thought was empty, only to find a strange and estranged cousin staring back at you. And in doing so, You have changed the destiny of both your worlds forever. The age of conquest is dead before it was born. The age of the theologian has begun. The year is 1492, but you do not know this number. Your calendar is a cycle of suns and seasons, etched into wood and stone. You stand on the highest terrace of the Great Mound, the man-made mountain that dominates your world. Before you, the city of Cahokia spreads out like a living map. It is not the ceremonial center of your ancestors. It is an imperial capital. It is a fortress. It is a forge. You are burning Sunday, a war priest in the service of the great Sunday, the living god who rules from the temple atop this very mound. Below you, the great plaza, once a space for games and ceremony, is now a parade ground. 1,000 warriors stand in disciplined ranks, their copper-crested helmets gleaming in the morning light. They are not armed with the stone maces of your grandfathers. They carry long spears tipped with grey metal and heavy axes that can split a logor, a mannin, a single blow. From the western edge of the city, a constant haze of dark smoke rises from the forging quarter, and the air carries the rhythmic, metallic clang of hammers striking anvils. This is the sound of your civilization's survival. This is the sound of the Hod Mississippian Empire. Hod. It is a foreign word, a northern word. It means battle. You learned it from a captive, a bearded man with eyes the color of the sky, before you slit his throat on the altar of the morning star. The word has stuck, a piece of grit that has become a pearl. It defines what you have become. Your world was not always this way. The old ones speak of a time before the great dying, when the plague that whispered down from the northern rivers swept through your cities. It burned through the Mississippi Valley, leaving behind a ghost world of empty towns and fallow fields. Cahokia itself nearly died. It was a time of chaos, of shattered chiefdoms and endless petty wars. Then came the first great Sunday, the unifier. He was the one who saw the truth. The plague was not a random curse. It had a source. The stories from refugee tribes to the north all spoke of the same thing. The Jarnmen, the Iron Men, the Marklendingar. They were a creeping poison. Their traders and explorers the vectors of disease. Their settlements, a spear point aimed at the heart of your lands. The unifier preached a new doctrine, a brutal gospel of survival. He said the spirits had sent the Iron Men to test you, to see if you were worthy of the land they had given you. To survive, you could not simply resist. You had to become stronger. You had to learn the enemy's magic. You had to steal his iron soul. So began the Northern Wars. Your grandfather was a raider in those wars. His war parties did not strike for glory or captives for adoption. They struck for knowledge. They bypassed the allied Algonquian tribes on Markland's borders and attacked the new Norse outposts on the Great Lakes directly. They captured their lake drakars. They took their tools. And most importantly, they took their blacksmiths. The first Norse smiths were treated like gods, then like slaves. They were brought to Cahokia, chained in pits, and forced, under penalty of excruciating torture, to reveal the secrets of the forge. They were made to teach your craftsmen how to find the bog iron in the marshes, how to build the furnaces of clay and stone, how to work the metal into weapons. The first iron axe forged in Cahokia was consecrated with the blood of the smith who made it. It was a necessary cruelty. It was the price of your future. This is the central paradox of your empire. To save the Mississippian way of life, you have had to fundamentally alter it. Your society, once a complex web of tributary chiefdoms held together by faith and kinship, is now a centralized, militaristic state. The Great Sunday is no longer just a high priest. He is a supreme commander. The old clans have been reformed into legions. The ritual calendar is now a schedule for military campaigns. You have adopted the cold logic of your enemy. This has created a rigid, unyielding social order. At the top is the great Sunday and his family. Below him are the warrior and priestly castsmen like you. Then come the farmers and the artisans. And at the very bottom, a vast population of conquered peoples from subjugated tribes, living in a state of permanent servitude, toiling in the fields, and the new, dangerous iron mines to feed the imperial war machine. You have preserved your people by becoming tyrants to others. You tell yourself it is the will of the spirits. You tell yourself it is for the greater good. The ethical dilemma is one you live every day. You are a priest. You still practice the old rites. You watch the sun's journey from the Woodhenge to the west of the city. You read the omens in the flight of the hawk. But your faith has been reforged, just like your weapons. The old birdman cult, which celebrated the warrior as a dancer between worlds, now depicts its heroes with the iron talons of a predator. Your gods have become hungrier, demanding more sacrifice, more blood, to fuel the eternal struggle against the northern darkness. You are saving your religion by making it more savage. The unexpected, ironic twist is how your singular focus has blinded you. For a century, every aspect of your society has been reoriented to face a single threat, from a single direction. Your armies are trained for forest warfare against the Marklandic shield wall. Your fortifications are all on your northern frontier. Your diplomats work to turn the Algonquian tribes against their Norse masters. Your entire world is defined by this bipolar struggle against the Iron Men. You are so focused on the enemy you know that you have forgotten to watch for the one you don't. You are contemplating this, looking north from the summit of the Great Mound. When you see a runner, he is not coming from the north. He is sprinting from the south, from the trade routes that lead to the Great Southern Water, the Gulf of Mexico. He is an official courier. His exhaustion is a message in itself. He is brought before the Great Sunday, and you are there to hear his report. His words are breathless, almost incoherent. He speaks of news passed up the river from the coastal tribes, news of ships, but not the lake drakers of the Iron Men. These are different. They are floating mountains, he gasps, with white wings like clouds. They carry men with skin like a peeled nut, but with hair on their faces like the Iron Men, and they have new magic. They wear a skin of shining metal that an arrow cannot pierce. They ride upon four-legged beasts, swift as the deer but massive as the bison, and they carry small black sticks that speak with thunder and smoke, killing a man from a distance greater than any bowshot. A cold silence falls over the temple chamber. The Great Sunday, a man who has never known fear, looks from the runner to his council of war priests. The news is impossible. It is a child's fantasy. But the runner's terror is real. You, Burning Sunday, feel a dread that is colder and deeper than any fear of a Marklandic axe. You realize the truth in an instant of sickening clarity. The world is not a simple map with Cahokia in the south and Markland in the north. It is a far larger and far more terrible place than you ever imagined. Your empire, forged in the crucible of one conflict, has spent 150 years preparing for the wrong war. You have built an army of iron spearmen to fight an enemy that attacks with gunpowder and steel plate. You have secured your northern border while leaving your southern coast completely undefended. The Unifier saved you from the Iron Men by teaching you to think like them. But he never taught you to think about the sea. As the Great Sunday gives orders to send scouts south to verify this impossible story, you look at the iron axe in your hand. It felt like the ultimate weapon this morning, the symbol of your people's strength and ingenuity. Now, it feels like a child's toy, a relic from an age that has just, in this moment, ended. The hot Mississippian Empire stands at the apex of its power, a mighty pyramid of culture, faith, and military might. But its foundations are about to be washed away by a tide from a world it did not know existed. The year is 1530. You are standing in a hall that rivals any in Europe, but it feels nothing like a European university. This is the great Lyceum of Stormsfjord, the intellectual heart of the Kingdom of Markland. There is no cold stone, no vaulted Gothic arches. The hall is built of warm red cedar and fragrant spruce, the air filled with the scent of old wood, beeswax, and drying herbs. Light streams in not through stained glass depicting saints, but through wide, clear panes of skillfully crafted glass, a recent and prized invention. The walls are not lined with portraits of kings or bishops. They are covered with maps. Maps of coastlines, of river systems, of mountain ranges. Maps of star charts, meticulously corrected for the northern latitudes. Maps detailing the migratory patterns of caribou and the spawning grounds of salmon. This is not a place for abstract theology or scholastic debate. This is a temple to the practical, the observable, the knowable world. You are Ragnar Karlsdotter, a scholar of the Lyceum. You are not a nun in a cloister. You are a wife, a mother, and one of the foremost natural philosophers of your generation. Your field is Grasser and Socknerth, study of plants. You are compiling a grand encyclopedia, a Vinlandic herbal, that seeks to catalogue every plant on the continent, blending the Norse tradition of runic notation with the rich oral knowledge of your Algonquian forebears. This is the Vinlandic Renaissance. It is not a rebirth of classical antiquity, like the one beginning to flicker in the courts of Italy. The Marklandingar have no Rome or Athens to look back upon. Their Renaissance is a flowering of their own unique, hybrid culture. It is a forward-looking movement born from 5 centuries of adaptation to a new and demanding environment. The philosophy that underpins this Renaissance is profoundly different from its European counterpart. European thought, from Plato to Aquinas, was obsessed with the universal, the abstract, the eternal form. It sought to understand the mind of God. Here, in Markland, philosophy is rooted in the specific, the tangible, the cyclical process. The highest intellectual pursuit is not to understand God, but to understand the intricate, interconnected web of His creation. It is a science of ecology, born centuries before the word would be invented in our timeline. You see this everywhere in the Lyceum. In one corner, a scholar is dissecting a beaver, not to prove a theological point, but to understand the mechanics of its dam building, knowledge that is then applied to the construction of Markland's own mills and locks. In another room, a historian is not debating the nature of the soul, but interviewing a Mi'kmaq elder, using a modified runic script to record a 1,000-year-old oral history of the land before the Norse arrived. It is a deeply pragmatic and respectful form of knowledge acquisition. The written word itself reflects this. While the priests still use the Latin alphabet for their liturgical texts, the language of science, history, and saga-telling is the Futhark, the runic alphabet. But it too has evolved. It has been expanded with new characters to represent the sounds of Algonquian words, and its very form has been influenced by the flowing, pictorial symbols of native wampum belts. The sagas being written in this hall are not just about jarls and battles. They are sagas of exploration, of seasons, of the life cycle of the great forests. The epic hero of the Vinlandic Renaissance is not a warrior, but a man like Leif Bjarkason, the Elog-farer who first mapped the Great Lakes. This has led to a different technological path. While European science was driven by warfare and the desire for prestige-bigger cannons, grander cathedrals' Marklandic technology has been driven by the need for sustainability and adaptation. You see it in the models that fill the Lyceum's central hall. A new type of water wheel, its design mimicking the curve of a salmon's fin to maximize efficiency. a system of crop rotation that perfectly integrates the European grains with the native Three Sisters to replenish the soil's nutrients. A prototype for a wind-powered ship that can sail against the current of the great rivers, its sails woven from a new, stronger hybrid of flax and milkweed fibre. The paradox of this renaissance is its combination of empirical brilliance and profound isolation. The scholars of Markland know more about the ecology of North America than any people in history. They have created a stable, sustainable society in harmony with its environment. But they know almost nothing of the world beyond their shores. Their maps of Europe are fanciful things, based on sagas 5 centuries out of date. They know of the Hod Mississippian Empire to the south as a rival power, but their understanding of it is filtered through the lens of fear and religious dogma. They are masters of their own world, but utterly ignorant of the greater one. This ignorance is about to be shattered. The reason for your work's urgency is sitting on a table in the centre of the hall. It is an object brought back by a Marklandic trading ship from the southern islands, where it was bartered from the terrified natives. It is a Spanish helmet, a morion. It is so far beyond your people's metalworking that it feels like sorcery. Your best blacksmiths have examined it, marvelling at the quality of the steel, the flawless curve, the sheer industrial perfection of it. Beside it lies a captured weapon, a long, slender blade of Toledo steel. Your finest iron axes would shatter against it. This is the unexpected, terrifying twist that has galvanized the Vinlandic Renaissance. It is no longer a peaceful pursuit of knowledge. It has become a desperate race for survival. The vague, half-forgotten threat of Europe has become real. The Spanvajar, as you call them, have arrived, and their technology is a brutal refutation of your own. Your ecological, sustainable science suddenly seems quaint and dangerously inadequate. What good is a perfectly balanced crop rotation when faced with an army clad in steel plate? What use is a saga about the life of a moose when the enemy brings cannons? The ethical dilemma now facing the Lyceum is stark. Do you abandon your principles to catch up? Do you turn your knowledge of wind and water towards building better warships? Do you convert the forges that make plowshares into factories for weapons? The Herjal and the Law Council are demanding it. They have commissioned the Lyceum to reverse engineer the Spanish steel, to understand their shipbuilding, to find a way to counter their gunpowder. The focus of your intellectual world is shifting from understanding to destroying. The study of herbs for medicine is being overshadowed by the search for more potent poisons for arrowheads. The mapping of coastlines is no longer for trade, but for defense. The Vinlandic Renaissance is being militarized. You, Ragnar Karlsdotter, are at the center of this. You look at your nearly completed herbal, a lifetime of work, a monument to a worldview of balance and respect. Then you look at the Spanish helmet, a symbol of a worldview of power and domination. You know they cannot coexist. One will destroy the other. A messenger arrives from the Herjal's court. Your expertise in plant chemistry is required. The Law Council wants to know if you can devise a chemical that will burn hot enough to warp Spanish armor, a fire that will stick to metal. You are a healer, a cataloger of life. They are asking you to become a creator of weapons. You feel a profound sense of grief. Your renaissance was born of wonder. It is about to be consumed by fear. As you walk towards the council chambers, you realize that the greatest test of your civilization is not how it lives with the natural world, but whether it can survive contact with another human one that does not share its values. And you fear that in order to survive, you will have to become more like the enemy you despise. The year is 1535. You are cowering in a hastily dug trench, the air thick with the metallic smell of blood, the acrid smoke of gunpowder, and the terrifying alien scent of burning sugarcane. This is not the green, pine-scented forest of Markland. This is a humid, sweltering hell. You are on the island the Spaniards call Hispaniola, and you are a soldier in the First Transatlantic War. Your name is Bjorn, but your men call you Bjorn the Bear for your size and ferocity in battle. You are a huskarl, a professional soldier in the service of the Jarl of Markland. 6 months ago, you were part of the great fleet that sailed south from Stromsfjord. 50 Lake Drakkars and a dozen larger, newly built coastal warships, their dragon prows seeming to snarl at the tropical sun. Your mission was not conquest. It was a preemptive strike. The Spanish had established a major base here at Santo Domingo. From it, they launched probes north, their priests and soldiers testing the borders of your world. They brought with them not just the cross, but a papal bull issued by Pope Clement VII. It did not grant them the land. It condemned you. It declared the people of Markland and their forest Christ to be a secta diabolica, a satanic cult. It called upon the good Catholic kings of Europe to cleanse the western lands of this foul heresy and bring its deluded souls back to the one true faith. It was a declaration of holy war. The Jarl and the Law Council saw it for what it was, a theological justification for invasion. They chose to strike first, to destroy the Spanish forward base before the main crusading fleet could arrive from Europe. And so you find yourself here, fighting a war of two faiths. It is a war of shocking brutality, a clash of military philosophies. Your army is a hybrid force. The core is the Norse shield wall, a disciplined line of infantry armed with long spears and heavy axes, a tactic honed against the warriors of the Mississippian Empire. Woven into this are your Algonquian allies, masters of forest warfare, who move like ghosts through the jungle, striking at the Spanish flanks with bows and tomahawks. Your greatest asset is your knowledge of the land, your ability to live off it, to use its terrain as a weapon. The Spanish are something else entirely. They are a professional army, forged in the crucible of the Reconquista. Their infantry fights in disciplined squares of pike and shot called tercios. Their cavalry, armoured knights on powerful war horses, are a terrifying force on open ground. And their cannons are the voice of a wrathful god, tearing gaping holes in your shield wall from a distance you cannot answer. This war is a gruesome equation of advantages and disadvantages. In the dense jungle, you are supreme. You ambush their patrols, you cut their supply lines, your archers rain arrows from the trees. You have laid siege to Santo Domingo, trapping the main Spanish force within its walls. But on the open fields around the city, where they have cleared the land for sugar plantations, they are masters. Last week, you witnessed a cavalry charge. A squadron of armoured knights, lances couched, smashed into a company of your best huskarls. It was not a battle, it was a slaughter. The horses, which your people called demon stags, were a psychological weapon as much as a physical one. Many of your men, who had never seen an animal larger than an elk, simply broke and ran. The paradox of this war is that you are fighting it alongside an unexpected and profoundly troubling ally. When you landed on Hispaniola, you were met not just by the Spanish, but by the Mississippians. A war party from the hot Mississippian Empire, led by a fearsome war priest named Flaming Serpent, had also arrived. Their own spies had warned them of the Spanish threat. They saw the Thundermen as an existential danger to their empire, just as you did. The old axiom, "The enemy of my enemy is my friend," has become a grim reality. You now find yourself fighting side by side with the warriors of the Sun Kingdom, your people's hereditary foe. It is a tense, pragmatic, and deeply unstable alliance. You respect their ferocity and their discipline. They are not the savages of your kingdom's propaganda. They are professional soldiers, their command structure as rigid as your own. You have shared food with them, camped beside them, and seen them die fighting the same enemy. But you have not forgotten the century of brutal border wars. You have not forgotten that their priests sacrifice your captured countrymen on blood-soaked pyramids. The alliance is one of pure, desperate convenience. Flaming Serpent, the Mississippian commander, looks at you with the same cold, calculating pragmatism. You can see it in his eyes. He is learning from you. He is watching how your shield wall holds against a pike formation. He is studying the design of your warships. He knows that once the Spanish are dealt with, you will be enemies again. This war is a training exercise for the next one. The ethical dilemma of this alliance is a constant, gnawing presence. To defeat the Spanish, you must work with a regime whose values are, in many ways, even more antithetical to your own. The Mississippians practice a form of slavery that makes your kingdom's indentured servitude look benign. They wage war with a level of ritual cruelty that shocks even your hardened huskarls. Are you saving your soul from the Spanish heretic hunters only to sell it to the priests of a blood god? The unexpected twist of the campaign comes from a source no one anticipated: the Taino. The native people of the island, decimated by Spanish disease and brutality, see your arrival as a divine intervention. They flock to your banner, eager to fight their oppressors. But they do not join your ranks as warriors. They join as labourers, as guides, and most importantly, as carriers of disease. They are survivors of the first wave of European plagues and carry immunities that your own people lack. And they introduce these diseases smallpox, typhus into your camps. Your army, which has its own history of disease immunity, is now hit by a biological counterattack. A wasting sickness, the spotted death, begins to spread through your ranks. Your own biological weapon, the whispering plague that cleared your path to a continent, has been turned back against you. The siege of Santo Domingo begins to falter not because of Spanish cannons, but because of the fevers raging through your camps. You lie in your tent now, shivering with fever, one of the lucky ones who seems to be recovering. The war has ground to a stalemate. You control the island's interior. The Spanish control the city and the sea lanes. The Mississippians control a swath of the south. It is a three-way deadlock of exhaustion, disease, and fear. You look at a strange object on the small table next to your cot. It is a gift from Flaming Serpent, the Mississippian commander, a gesture of respect after a joint raid. It is a small, clay figurine of the Birdman, the sacred warrior spirit of his people. He told you it was for your protection. You, a soldier of the forest Christ, are now putting your faith in a pagan idol given to you by a man you know you will one day have to kill. This is the reality of the war of two faiths. It is not two. It is three, a triangle of enmities and alliances, of steel, obsidian, and iron. And it is a war that no one is winning. The only victor is death, who wears a Spanish helmet, a Norse beard, and a feathered Mississippian cloak. The year is 1537. You are not in a muddy trench in the New World, but in a dusty, book-lined study in the heart of the old. You are in Wittenberg, Saxony, a city buzzing with a revolutionary fervour that is shaking the foundations of Europe. You are Philip Melanchthon, a scholar, a theologian, and the right-hand man to the most dangerous man in Christendom, Martin Luther. For 20 years, you and Luther have waged a war of words and faith against the corruption of the papacy. You have argued for salvation through faith alone, for the priesthood of all believers, for a church returned to its scriptural roots. Your 95 theses were a spark, and the German principalities have become a roaring bonfire of religious rebellion. You have challenged the monolithic power of Rome, and you are, against all odds, succeeding. Then the letters began to arrive. They came not from the south, from Rome, but from the west, smuggled out of Spain and Portugal by sympathetic merchants and reform-minded priests. They were hurried, secret things, filled with incredible stories. They spoke of the war in Hispaniola, of the stalemate, of the surprising strength of the Vinlandic heretics. But they also contained something far more potent than military intelligence. They contained theology. At first, you and Luther dismissed the stories as Catholic propaganda, designed to frighten the German princes back into the fold with tales of a new, even more terrifying heresy. But as more accounts trickled in, translated excerpts of captured Marklandic texts, interrogations of prisoners, a coherent and explosive picture emerged. You are holding one of these documents now. It is a translation of a prayer taken from the body of a dead Marklandic Huskarl. It is addressed to the Forest Christ, and it speaks of the sacredness of the river and the spirit of the stag. It is undeniably Christian in its core vocabulary. It speaks of sin, sacrifice, and resurrection. But its worldview, its imagery, its very soul, is utterly alien. It is a Christianity that has not passed through Rome, that has not been shaped by Greek philosophy or Roman law. This is the document that has thrown the Protestant Reformation into a crisis. For Luther, the struggle has always been a binary one: the true, scriptural faith versus the corrupt, man-made doctrines of the Pope. He is trying to reform a single, universal church. But the existence of Markland presents a third option he never considered. It is not a reformation. It is a separate, parallel evolution. It is proof that another form of Christianity, independent of Rome, can exist. This is the great, world-altering twist. The Kingdom of Markland, by its very existence, becomes the Reformation's most powerful and most problematic ally. When the Pope condemned the Marklandingar as a secta diabolica, he inadvertently handed Luther a weapon of immense power. You watch as Luther paces your study, his mind, always a whirlwind of passion and intellect, working furiously. "Do you see, Philip?" he thunders, slamming his fist on the table. The Pope condemns them as heretics, just as he condemns us. He calls them satanic for seeking God in the trees. Does he not call us satanic for seeking God in the Scripture, without his Roman spectacles? The logic is undeniable. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Luther sees a strategic, theological, and political opportunity that could shatter the Catholic Church forever. He begins to preach a new, expanded message. The Roman Church is not just corrupt, he argues. It is arrogant. It has blinded itself not only to the truth of the Bible, but to the diverse ways God has revealed himself to the world. He points to Markland as the prime example. Are we to believe? He preaches from the pulpit of the castle church that God could not plant a seed of faith in the West, just as he did in the East, that he requires a Roman bishop to give it permission to grow. This fractures the Reformation. Before, it was a largely European affair. Now, it has become a global one. A frantic three-way struggle for the soul of Christianity begins. Rome sees both Luther and the Marklandingar as two heads of the same demonic beast. One, a rebellion of the book; the other, a rebellion of nature. The Counter-Reformation becomes a war on two fronts, draining the resources and resolve of the Habsburg emperors who are its champions. Luther and the German princes see Markland as a powerful symbol and a potential ally. They begin sending secret envoys, not just letters, trying to establish contact, to form a League of Independent Churches against the tyranny of Rome. They want to find common ground, to see if the Forest Christ and the Scriptural Christ can make common cause. Markland, isolated and fighting for its life, is suddenly made aware that it is not alone. A captured German observer with the Spanish forces is brought to the Herjal. He tells of a brother heresy across the sea. The Marklandingar are baffled, then intrigued. They had seen all of Europe as a monolithic Rome. Now they learn it is broken, fighting with itself. This creates a profound paradox for you and your fellow reformers. You are embracing a version of Christianity that, by your own standards, is deeply flawed. The Marklandic faith is syncretic, filled with what you would call pagan superstitions. They have saints, priests, and rituals that are not found in the Bible. They venerate nature in a way that verges on pantheism. To ally with them is to compromise the very principle of sola scriptura, scripture alone. That is the bedrock of your movement. You argue this point with Luther late one night. How can we make common cause with men who pray to trees and old gods, you ask. Luther's reply is pragmatic and brutal. We will make common cause with the devil himself if it will break the neck of the Pope, he says. Let God sort out the details later. First, we must shatter the prison. Then we can debate the shape of the new house. This decision has immediate, earth-shattering consequences. The Protestant princes of Germany, seeing a chance to weaken their Habsburg overlords, begin to secretly fund Marklandic privateers. German and Scandinavian shipwrights and metalworkers, sympathetic to the cause, undertake the perilous journey to offer their services to the Herjal. The technological gap begins to close. The Vinlandic Renaissance, which had been on the verge of being crushed, is now infused with the cutting-edge military technology of Reformation Europe. The ethical dilemma is immense. You, a man of God, are now complicit in a global proxy war. You are helping to arm a people whose faith you do not fully accept to fight another group of Christians. The clear moral lines of your rebellion have become blurred and smeared with the blood of soldiers on a continent you will never see. The fractured cross is no longer just a metaphor. It is the new map of the world. 3 great Christian blocs now compete for global dominance. The traditional imperial Catholicism of Spain and the Holy Roman Emperor, the scriptural, state-based Protestantism of Northern Europe, and the syncretic, ecological American Christianity of Markland. They are not just fighting over territory or trade routes. They are fighting over the definition of God himself. And you, Philip Melanchthon, scholar and man of peace, have helped to load the guns for all 3 sides. You look at the prayer of the forest Christ on your desk, and you wonder if you have unleashed a new age of faith, or merely a new and more terrible age of war. The year is 1642. You are standing in the heart of a city that should not exist, witnessing a ceremony that will change the balance of power on the continent. The city is Onondaga, the central fire of the Haudenosaunee, the people of the Longhouse. But it is not the sprawling village of bark and wood that it was 2 centuries ago. It is a fortified capital, its perimeter marked not by a simple palisade, but by a sophisticated system of earthen ramparts and star-shaped bastions, a design learned from studying the wars between the Marklandingar and the Spanish. You are Hiawatha, but not the mythic figure of legend. You are a real man, a war chief of the Mohawk, and a Tadodaho, a chief of the Grand Council of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. For generations your people have been the fulcrum upon which the continent has turned. You are not a great empire like the Mississippians to the south, or a kingdom like Markland to the east. You are something far more resilient. You are a republic. Today, you are ratifying that republic in a new and permanent form. Before you, on a table crafted from a single slab of white pine, lies the Guyana Shagawa, the great law of peace. It is your constitution, the sacred oral tradition that has bound your 5 nations, the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, and Seneca for centuries. But it is no longer just an oral tradition. For the first time, it is being written down. A young Seneca man, educated in the mission schools of Markland but fiercely loyal to his own people, is carefully transcribing the law. He is not using the clumsy runes of the Norse or the blocky letters of the Europeans. He is using a unique syllabary, a writing system invented by a sequoia of this timeline, specifically designed to capture the nuances of your Iroquoian languages. This moment is the culmination of 500 years of masterful, ruthless diplomacy and strategic adaptation. While the great powers to your east and south were locked in their epic struggle, your people played the long game. You were not crushed between them. You thrived. When the Whispering Plague first swept through, your people suffered, but you did not shatter. Your political structure, the great law of peace, provided a framework for survival. It allowed you to absorb the remnants of other Iroquoian peoples, the Erie, the Huron, the Neutral, who were destroyed by the plagues and the subsequent wars. You grew stronger from their weakness. You learned from the Marklandingar. You traded with them, but never allied. You maintained a posture of armed neutrality. You sold them the furs they craved, and in return, you demanded not trinkets, but iron. Not just axe heads and knives, but iron blooms, raw metal that your own captured and trained smiths could work. You adopted their metalworking, but on your own terms. You learned from the Mississippians. You fought them to a standstill on your southern borders, adopting their tactics of disciplined formations when it suited you, and melting back into the forest for guerrilla warfare when it did not. And you learned from the Europeans. When the Protestant-funded privateers and the Spanish Crusaders brought their firearms to the continent, you understood their power immediately. You did not beg for guns. You captured them. You mastered them. A Haudenosaunee warrior is now as comfortable with a flintlock rifle as he is with a bow. You have become the masters of the three wars: the war of the forest, the war of the open field, and the war of the firearm. The paradox of your republic is its brutal pragmatism. The great law of peace, which you are now codifying, is a document of profound democratic and philosophical depth. It speaks of the rights of individuals, the balance of power between men and women, the freedom of speech, and the peaceful resolution of conflict. It contains principles of federalism and representative government that would astound the political philosophers of Europe. It is the ideological foundation of a free and egalitarian society. But your republic has been preserved by a foreign policy of relentless, unsentimental violence. You are surrounded by enemies, and you have survived by being more cunning, more adaptable, and, when necessary, more brutal than any of them. You practice a kind of morning war that has been scaled to an industrial level. You raid your enemies not just for territory, but to adopt their people, forcibly assimilating them into your own nations to replenish your population losses from war and disease. Your Republic of Peace is sustained by a perpetual state of war. This is the ethical dilemma that haunts your councils. To preserve your freedom, you have had to extinguish the freedom of others. To maintain your peaceful confederacy, you have become the most feared military power in the Northeast. The clans of women who hold the power to appoint and depose chiefs preach peace, while the war chiefs they appoint lead raids that burn the villages of your neighbors. You are a republic of eagles that lives on the flesh of deer. The unexpected twist that forced this final, formal step of writing down the law came from the West. The Hod Mississippian Empire, reeling from a series of costly defeats against the Spanish in the south and frustrated by your impenetrable border, finally collapsed. Not in a single battle, but in a cascade of rebellions by its subjugated peoples. The great city of Cahokia is a ghost town, its empire shattered into a dozen successor chiefdoms. This power vacuum did not bring peace, it brought chaos. A flood of refugees and marauding war bands now presses on your western frontier. The old, informal methods of governance are no longer enough. You need a formal state. You need written treaties, defined borders, and a professional, standing army, funded by a centralized treasury filled with the profits of your carefully controlled trade in iron and furs. By writing down the great law, you are transforming it. You are turning an oral covenant of peace into the written constitution of a nation-state. You are creating the Haudenosaunee Republic. You watch as the scribe finishes the final symbol. The assembled chiefs of the 5 nations come forward one by one to make their mark upon the document. It is a moment of profound gravity. You have created a buffer state, a powerful third force in the geopolitical landscape of North America. You are not a colony of Markland. You are not a tributary of some distant European power. You are your own masters. Your new republic will be a powerhouse of diplomacy. You will play the Marklandingar against the Spanish, the Protestants against the Catholics, extracting concessions and technology from all sides while committing to none. Your capital at Onondaga will become a hotbed of international intrigue, a place where Norse-speaking traders from Stormsfjord haggle with Jesuit spies from New Spain and gunrunners from Protestant Germany. As the ceremony concludes, you look at the faces of the young warriors in the crowd. They were born into this world of iron and gunpowder. They do not remember the old ways. They are citizens of a republic their ancestors could not have imagined. You have secured their future. You have given them a state. But you wonder what has been lost. The great law was once a living thing, a breath passed from generation to generation. Now it is ink on processed wood pulp. In making your society permanent, you may have sacrificed something of its soul. You have created a powerful modern republic, but one whose heart is a paradox of peace and violence, freedom and assimilation. The year is 1780. You are standing on a hill overlooking the city of Hopewell Timeline's Quebec City, and the scene below you is not one of quaint colonial charm. It is a vision of a different kind of industrial revolution, one powered not by the black heart of coal, but by the green heart of the forest. The air does not have the sulphurous bite of burning coal that is beginning to choke London in another world. It smells of wood smoke, yes, but also of sawdust, steam, and the sharp, clean scent of the river. The city is a sprawling metropolis of wood and stone, but its lifeblood is the great river, the Elgar. Along its banks, as far as the eye can see, are not the dark, satanic mills of William Blake's nightmares, but a series of immense, whirring and hissing structures, the great river mills of Markland. You are Svein, a master engineer, a descendant of the first Elog farers who charted these waters. Your life's work is the perfection of these mills. They are the engines of Markland's economy, the source of its unique industrial might. This is the age of steam and ash. The technological divergence began a century ago. The Vinlandic Renaissance, with its focus on practical, ecological science, never saw the earth as a repository of resources to be plundered. The idea of digging deep into the ground for black rocks to burn was culturally and theologically alien. Their worldview, which saw the surface of the world as a sacred, living thing, recoiled from such a violation. Their power source was not under their feet, but all around them. The immense, seemingly endless forests, and the powerful, eternal rivers. Their industrial revolution was hydraulic. For generations they perfected the water wheel, using the designs of the Lyceum to build massive, efficient engines powered by the currents of the Elgar and its tributaries. These wheels did not just grind grain. They powered sawmills that could process 100 logs a day. They powered looms for weaving wool and flax. They powered the bellows and trip hammers of the forges, which were now producing a grade of steel that, thanks to infusions of Protestant German knowledge, could rival that of the Spanish. Then came the steam engine. The principle was known, brought over by European engineers fleeing the religious wars. But Markland did not have the coal to make it viable. This was the great challenge that your grandfather's generation faced. The solution they found was the source of the age's name: ash. Not the tree, but the residue of burning. The forests of Markland were vast, but not infinite. The demand for fuel for heating and for the forges was immense. The great conservationist ethic of the Forest Christ faith led to an obsession with efficiency and waste reduction. Every part of a felled tree was used. The timber for building, the smaller branches for fuel, the bark for tanning, and the ash from the fires, rich in potassium carbonate or potash, was collected. It was a critical ingredient for making soap, glass, and fertilizer. A Marklandic engineer, a woman named Astrid, discovered that by compressing wood scraps and sawdust into dense bricks and burning them in a specially designed oxygen-starved furnace, she could create a substance with a much higher energy density than raw wood, charcoal. This charcoal burned hot enough and long enough to make steam power practical. So the steam engines of Markland are not fed by coal, but by charcoal bricks produced in vast, state-run pyrolysis plants. The byproduct of this process is not slag and soot, but immense quantities of wood ash, which has become one of Markland's most valuable exports. You trade it to the Haudenosaunee for agricultural products and to the beleaguered Spanish colonies for sugar and silver. Your industry is powered by a renewable resource, and its waste product is a valuable commodity. This is the great paradox of your industrial revolution. It is green, by the standards of a later age. It has not filled the skies with carbon. The rivers, while harnessed, are not yet polluted with industrial chemicals. This has created a different kind of industrial city. Hop is large, it is crowded, but it is integrated with the natural world in a way Manchester or Birmingham never would be. The mills are spaced out along the river, interspersed with green spaces and forests that are carefully managed and replanted. It is an industrialism tempered by an ecological conscience. But this clean industry is built on a foundation that is anything but. The demand for wood is astronomical. The endless forests of the coast are now heavily depleted. Your industry's hunger for timber is driving an aggressive, relentless expansion westward. The e-log farers of today are not explorers. They are surveyors for logging companies. They push into the territories of independent native tribes, assess the timber value, and are followed by armies of lumberjacks. This green revolution is fueling a red wave of deforestation and dispossession on your frontiers, far more systematic and destructive than the old piecemeal expansion of homesteaders. The ethical dilemma is embodied by the men who work in the charcoal plants. They are the lowest rung of Marklandic society. Captives from the frontier wars, debtors working off their obligations, and landless immigrants from the failing Greenland colony. They work in brutal conditions, in clouds of toxic wood gas, their lives shortened by lung ailments. Your clean industry has a dirty secret. It has not eliminated the exploited urban proletariat. It has just hidden it away in the charcoal, making camps deep in the woods. You have created an environmental paradise for the cities by creating a living hell for the men who fuel it. The unexpected twist of this technological path is the development of a unique chemical industry. The obsession with using every part of the tree has led to a mastery of wood chemistry. The scholars at the Lyceum are not developing coal tar dyes. They are extracting chemicals from wood gas and pine resin. They have created potent new medicines, waterproof sealants for their ships, and, most importantly, powerful new explosives derived from distilled turpentine. Your armies are no longer reliant on captured European gunpowder. They have their own, more powerful pine fire. You, as a master engineer, are at the forefront of this age. You are currently overseeing the installation of a new, massive steam engine in the Herjal's own shipyard. It is an Astrid cycle engine, a marvel of efficiency. It will power a series of saws that can shape the hull of a new class of warship, a steam drekka, a vessel that can travel upriver without wind or sail. Its heart, a charcoal-fired furnace. You feel a profound sense of pride in your work. You are building the future of your kingdom. You are creating a society that has power and wealth, but has not, you tell yourself, sacrificed its soul. You can walk out of your workshop and Within an hour, be in a pristine forest, hunting and fishing as your ancestors did. But as you look at the schematics for the new engine, you see the calculations for fuel consumption. You know how many acres of old-growth forest will have to be clear-cut to power this one shipyard for 1 year. You know the names of the tribes who live in that forest. You know their lands have just been opened for development by a decree from the Law Council. The age of steam and ash is a miracle of ingenuity. It has allowed Markland to industrialize without destroying its immediate environment. But the cost has not been eliminated. It has just been externalized, pushed onto the frontiers, onto the disenfranchised, onto the people whose voices are not heard in the council halls of Hop. Your revolution is clean only for those who live at its center. For those on its edge, it is an inferno. The year is 1815. You are standing on the docks of Bristol, England, a city whose wealth was built on the points of a triangle connecting this port with the coast of West Africa and the sugar islands of the Caribbean. In our history, this port was the bustling, brutal heart of the British slave trade, its ships crammed with human cargo, its merchants' pockets lined with the profits of human misery. But here, the docks are quiet. They are busy, yes, with trade in timber, fish, and textiles, but the specific, horrifying industry that defined this city's rise is absent. The grand mansions of the slave traders do not exist. The warehouses that held the implements of bondage, the chains, the brands, the collars, were never built. The moral stain that scarred the soul of the British Empire and the world is missing. You are an economist, a student of Adam Smith, and you are here to study the greatest puzzle of your age, the averted Atlantic trade. The question that obsesses the political economists of Europe is not why the slave trade ended, but why it never truly began. The answer lies 500 years in the past and 3,000 miles to the west. It lies with the strange heretical Kingdom of Markland. When the European powers, first Spain, then Portugal, France, and England, looked west, they did not find a sparsely populated continent, ripe for exploitation and in need of a massive imported labor force. They found a hemisphere that was already occupied, already developed, and already powerfully defended. They found, in essence, a market, not a vacuum. The economic impetus for the transatlantic slave trade was born of a simple, brutal equation: vast, fertile, and empty land in the Americas plus labor, intensive cash crops, sugar, tobacco, cotton, minus a local labor force decimated by disease, equals a massive demand for cheap, coerced labor from elsewhere. Africa, with its established internal slave markets and populations with some immunity to old-world diseases, became the tragic solution. But in this timeline, the equation is different. The land was not empty. The Kingdom of Markland, the Haudenosaunee Republic, and the various successor states of the Mississippian Empire constituted a complex political and economic landscape. They had their own populations, their own labor systems, and their own armies. You cannot establish vast sugar plantations on Hispaniola when the island is a permanent war zone between 3 competing powers. You cannot clear the forests of Virginia for tobacco when that land is the southern frontier of the Haudenosaunee Republic, which has mastered the use of the flintlock rifle. The Americas, in this world, are not a place to be simply taken. They are a place to be traded with. This is the great divergence. The primary economic relationship between Europe and the Americas is not one of colonial extraction, but of international trade. It is a tense, often violent trade, but it is a trade between relative equals. Markland offers timber, copper, furs, and its unique wood ash fertilizer. The Haudenosaunee offer high-quality furs and act as powerful middlemen for goods from the continental interior. The Spanish, confined to their initial footholds in the Caribbean and a sliver of Florida, trade manufactured goods and silver for what they can get. This changes everything, not just for the Americas, but for Africa and Europe as well. For Africa, without the insatiable demand from the Americas, the internal slave trade of West and Central Africa remains just that, internal. The coastal kingdoms like Dahomey or the Ashanti Empire do not morph into militaristic states geared almost entirely towards capturing and selling their neighbours. The demographic devastation, the bleeding of Africa that stole millions of its youngest and strongest people, is averted. The course of African history, no longer yoked to the demands of European slavers, proceeds along its own internal lines of development. The great empires of the Sahel and the sophisticated city-states of the Yoruba are not distorted and ultimately destroyed by the coastal trade in human beings. For Europe, the source of immense, easy wealth that fueled the rise of empires like Britain and France is absent. The sugar fortunes that funded so much of the early industrial revolution never materialize. This paradoxically slows down and alters the course of European industrialization. Without the massive profits from slavery, the accumulation of capital is more gradual, driven by domestic markets and intra-European trade. The ethical character of European capitalism is different too. It is still exploitative, but it is not built upon the foundational sin of chattel slavery. The moral rot at the heart of the Enlightenment, the hypocrisy of philosophers writing about liberty, while their societies practice the most extreme form of tyranny, is not there. This does not mean the world is a utopia. The ethical dilemma has not been solved. It has been displaced. The labour systems of the Americas are not benign. The Kingdom of Markland still relies on its system of thralls, captives and debtors serving long terms of hard labour in the charcoal camps and logging frontiers. The Haudenosaunee still practice their mourning wars, forcibly assimilating captured populations. The Spanish colonies are brutal military outposts. There is still immense suffering, exploitation, and unfreedom in the world. The key difference is that these systems are contained within the Americas. The evil is local, not global. There is no middle passage, no triangular trade that binds three continents in a chain of misery. The world is spared the unique, systematic horror of racialized, heritable, chattel slavery on an industrial scale. The unexpected twist is the impact on racial ideology. In our world, the economic necessity of slavery gave birth to the pseudoscience of racism to justify it. Theories were developed to prove that Africans were inherently inferior, subhuman, destined for servitude. In this world, that specific ideological poison never enters the bloodstream of Western thought. Prejudice and xenophobia certainly exist. The Europeans see the Marklandingar as strange heretics and the Haudenosaunee as cunning savages. The Marklandingar, in turn, are deeply prejudiced against the pagan Mississippians and the decadent Europeans. But these are cultural and religious bigotries, not a global hierarchy based on skin colour. The primary other for a European is not an African, but a bearded, axe-wielding forest Christ, worshipping heretic from Markland. This changes the very vocabulary of hatred. As an economist in Bristol, you see the consequences daily. This city is poorer than its counterpart in our timeline. Its merchants are less powerful, but its soul is cleaner. You walk past a church, and you know its stones were not paid for with the lives of enslaved Africans. The debate raging in Parliament is not about the abolition of a monstrous trade, but about tariffs on Marklandic timber. You conclude your study with a startling thought. The Vikings, those violent raiders of the Dark Ages, by successfully colonizing North America, inadvertently performed a great moral service for the world. Their violent, exclusive, and often brutal kingdom acted as a geopolitical shield. They were the rock upon which the wave of the slave trade broke. The world they created is not necessarily better. It is a world of three competing Christianities, of constant, low-grade warfare, of different forms of exploitation. The destiny of the African continent is profoundly, and perhaps positively, altered. The destiny of the indigenous peoples of North America is a complex tapestry of survival, adaptation, and ongoing conflict. The destiny of Europe is one of slower, less explosive growth. The great engine of suffering that was the Atlantic slave trade was averted, but humanity, you reflect grimly, has always been ingenious in finding new ways to oppress itself. The moral architecture of this world is simply different. Its sins arranged in a new and unfamiliar pattern. The year is 1914. You are standing in the freezing, windswept crow's nest of an ironclad warship, the Herjal Olav, the pride of the Marklandic Royal Navy. Below you, the slate-grey waters of the North Atlantic churn, dotted with the smoke-belching funnels of your fleet. This is not a fleet of wooden steam drakkers. These are beasts of steel, their hulls riveted together in the great shipyards of Hopp and Stromsfjord, their engines powered by massive, efficient diesel turbines that burn a refined oil distilled from shale deposits found deep in the continental interior. You are a young signals officer, and your job is to watch the horizon, not for land, but for the enemy, the grand fleet of the Eurasian coalition. The Great Western War has begun. This is not the World War I of our history. There was no shot heard round the world in Sarajevo. The tangled web of European alliances, the Triple Entente versus the Central Powers, never formed in the same way. The 20th century's first global conflict is not an internecine European struggle over nationalism and colonial ambition. It is the final, inevitable clash between the two great power blocks that have dominated the globe for 2 centuries. On one side is the Pan-American bloc. Its heart is the ancient Kingdom of Markland, now a major industrial and naval power. Its indispensable ally is the Haudenosaunee Republic, which controls the strategic heartland of the continent and fields a large, disciplined, and technologically advanced army. They are bound by a treaty of mutual defense and a shared interest in keeping European power out of the Americas. On the other side is the Eurasian coalition. It is dominated by 2 powers. The first is the Spanish Empire, which, after centuries of being checked in the Americas, turned its energies inward and eastward, consolidating its power in Europe and North Africa. The second is a powerful, authoritarian German Empire, which unified not under Prussia, but under the Habsburg dynasty of the Holy Roman Empire, which never fully fractured in this timeline. It is a deeply conservative, Catholic, and expansionist alliance, driven by a centuries-old crusading ideology to reclaim the heretical West. The flashpoint for the war was not a Balkan assassination, but a trade dispute over control of the North Atlantic shipping lanes and the rich fishing grounds of the Grand Banks. But the real cause is deeper. It is the culmination of 400 years of religious animosity, economic competition, and divergent civilizational paths. It is a war to decide which version of the modern world will prevail. The technology of this war is a strange and deadly mix. The diesel-powered ironclads are a Marklandic innovation, a result of their long expertise in engine technology. They are faster and have a longer range than the Eurasian coal-fired dreadnoughts. In the skies above, you see another Marklandic speciality: biplanes with frames of lightweight ash wood and engines burning a high-octane fuel derived from their advanced petrochemical industry. They are used for reconnaissance, spotting the enemy fleet for the great guns of the warships below. The Eurasian coalition, however, has superiority in other areas. Their expertise in chemistry, a legacy of German university research, has given them superior artillery shells and the terrifying new weapon of poison gas. Their armies are larger, and their command structure, forged in the crucible of European state-on-state warfare, is more ruthlessly efficient. The paradox of your side, the Pan-American bloc, is its internal cultural divide. You are fighting alongside the Haudenosaunee, but you are not friends. You are allies of convenience. The Marklandic army is organized along traditional European lines, with a clear officer hierarchy. The Haudenosaunee army is more democratic. Its units led by elected chiefs, its soldiers trained in both conventional and guerrilla tactics. This creates constant friction in joint operations. You see the Haudenosaunee as undisciplined, and they see you as rigid and unimaginative. Your alliance is a military necessity, but it is plagued by centuries of mutual suspicion. The ethical dilemma of the war is the concept of the home front. In Markland, the war effort is total. The great river mills have been converted to munitions factories. The charcoal plants work around the clock. Women, who have always held a more prominent role in Norse-derived society, have taken over the jobs in the factories and farms, a shield wall of mothers, as the state propaganda calls it. But the state has also become more authoritarian. The Herjarl, once an elected monarch, has become a hereditary title, and the current king rules with emergency powers that have suspended the authority of the Law Council. Dissent is crushed. Pacifists from the more traditional sects of the Forest Christ faith are imprisoned as traitors. To save your free society, you are becoming a military dictatorship. The unexpected twist of the war's opening stages is the failure of the Eurasian Grand Strategy. Their plan was to knock Markland out of the war with one decisive naval battle, the New Trafalgar, and then use their superior numbers to invade and overwhelm the Haudenosaunee. But they underestimated the Pan-American forces. The Marklandic fleet, faster and more familiar with the treacherous North Atlantic weather, refuses to engage in a decisive battle. Instead, you wage a war of raids and attrition, using your pine fire explosives to develop powerful naval mines and torpedoes launched from small, swift attack boats. You are bleeding their fleet dry, 1,000 cuts instead of a single blow. On land, the Haudenosaunee proved to be a nightmare for the Eurasian generals. The German-led invasion force, which lands in Spanish-held Florida and attempts to march north, is drawn into a vast, continental quagmire. The Haudenosaunee refuse to fight set-piece battles. They use the landscape as a weapon, conducting lightning raids, sabotaging supply lines, and melting back into the forests and hills of their vast territory. They are fighting on their home ground, defending their republic, and their morale is unbreakable. It is Napoleon's invasion of Russia and the Vietnam War rolled into one. You are watching this unfold from your perch on the Herjarl Olav. The signal lamp on a nearby destroyer begins to flash. A message from a scout plane. An enemy convoy has been spotted, sailing without a heavy escort, trying to resupply the bogged-down army in the south. The captain's orders are relayed up to the bridge. Your squadron changes course to intercept. This is the nature of the Great Western War. Not glorious charges and grand fleet actions, but a brutal grinding war of logistics, industry, and attrition. It is a war fought with diesel and steel, but it will be won by the side with the strongest will and the deepest reserves of resources and belief. As your ship cuts through the waves, you look west, towards the unseen continent. You are fighting for your king, for your kingdom, for the Forest Christ. But you are also fighting for a world that developed on its own terms, a world that refused to become a pale imitation of Europe. The war will be long, and it will be bloody. It will scar every nation it touches. But you know, with a certainty that chills you to the bone, that you cannot afford to lose. Losing means the end of your world. The year is 2024. You are standing on the waterfront in Stromsfjord, the city on the fjord, the capital of a hemisphere. The air is cool and clean, carrying the scent of the salt marsh estuary that has been meticulously preserved just south of the city. There is no smog. The ambient sound is not the roar of internal combustion, but a low, pervasive hum, the sound of a city powered entirely by hydroelectricity, piped down from the great dams on the Elgar and the Huson rivers. Before you, silent electric hydrofoils, their designs sleek and organic like leaping salmon, glide across the water, carrying commuters between the city's boroughs of Hafsvik, Raudesia, and Langijauer timelines Brooklyn, Staten Island, and Long Island. The skyline behind you is a forest of steel and glass, but it's a forest that remembers its roots. The skyscrapers soar, but their lines are softer, their forms often asymmetrical, mimicking the growth of trees or the structure of crystals. Etched into their facades, visible in the afternoon sun, are subtle, intricate patterns, runic knots, Algonquian geometrics, the flowing forms of the Vinlandic Renaissance. It is a city that has achieved modernity without disowning its past. You walk down the wide promenade towards the southern tip of the island. It leads to a grand park, and at its end, standing where the Statue of Liberty would be in our world, is a colossal figure. It is not a woman holding a torch. It is a man, cast in gleaming bronze, his hand resting on the hilt of a great axe, his gaze fixed firmly west, towards the continent. This is Leif Erikson, first settler. He is not a symbol of welcome for the tired, the poor, the huddled masses. There were no huddled masses. He is a symbol of primacy, of endurance, of a people who did not arrive as refugees to someone else's land, but who built their own world from the ground up, on their own terms. He is the founding father of a civilization, not the greeter at its gate. This is the reality of the modern Marklandic kingdom. It is stable, prosperous, and sustainable. It won the Great Western War, rather. It fought the Eurasian coalition to a bloody, exhausting stalemate in the 1930s. The world settled into an uneasy, tripolar peace. The Pan-American Bloc, a formal alliance between Markland and the Haudenosaunee Republic, dominates the Western Hemisphere. The Eurasian Coalition, a Catholic socialist entity led by a strange fusion of Spanish and German interests, controls Europe. And the African Federation, a loose but powerful union of nations that developed without the trauma of the slave trade, has become the world's great neutral power. Its cities like Lagos and Mombasa, centers of global trade and diplomacy. The paradox of your world is its profound, deeply ingrained peace and its suffocating cultural homogeneity. You have no memory of a major war. Your society has solved many of the problems that plagued our 20th century. The ecological ethic of the Forest Christ faith, combined with the technological path of the steam and ash revolution, led to a seamless transition to renewable energy. There was no age of oil wars, no climate crisis. The social fabric is strong. The blend of Norse and native traditions has created a society with strong community bonds, a deep respect for elders, and a social safety net rooted in the old clan structures. But as you walk through the clean, safe streets of Stromsfjord, you feel it, a certain quietness, a lack of friction, a sameness. The faces you see are variations on a theme. The pale skin and fair hair of the Norse, blended with the high cheekbones and dark eyes of the Algonquian peoples. Everyone speaks Marklandic, the modern evolution of the old trade Creole. Everyone is raised on the sagas of the Elog-farers and the stories of the Great Spirit. Everyone, more or less, believes the same things. The ethical dilemma of your age is not about race, or class, or pollution. It is about openness. It is the debate over the Utlendingarth Outlanders. Your society, having defined itself for 1,000 years against outsiders the Mississippians, the Spanish, the Eurasian Shahs, developed a powerful instinctual xenophobia. Immigration is almost non-existent. To become a citizen of Markland is nearly impossible. You must prove direct lineage to the families of the founding peoples. You pass a public square where a political rally is taking place. A populist politician from the Markland First Party is speaking, his voice amplified by humming hydro-electric speakers. For 1,000 years, we've kept our culture pure, our lands clean, our faith strong, he bellows. Why should we now open our gates to the decadent, godless hordes of Eurasia or the alien cultures of the South? We are a garden in a world of weeds. We must keep the walls high. He is met with thunderous applause. But you also see a group of young people at the edge of the crowd, holding signs with a single rune. Dagaz, the rune of dawn, of breakthrough. They are part of a growing youth movement that argues this cherished isolation is no longer a strength, but a weakness. They listen to illicit radio broadcasts from Africa, hungry for the strange, vibrant music. They read smuggled Eurasian philosophy. They believe that Markland's long, peaceful dream has become a form of stagnation. This brings you to the great, unexpected irony of your world. You visit the great music hall near the city centre. The performance is beautiful. It is a symphony based on the life of the Herjal Olav. Its melodies, a haunting fusion of Norse folk tunes and native flute music. Its rhythms, the beat of the powwow drum and the Viking war drum. It is complex, moving, and utterly unique. But it is the only music you have. There is no jazz, no blues, no rock and roll, no hip-hopfer. There was no middle passage, no African-American experience to birth them. There is no klezmer music, no great tradition of cinematic scores for the Jewish diaspora never flowed to your shores. Your art, your science, your philosophy, it is all deep, but it is also narrow. Your civilization avoided the great sins of ours, but in doing so, it missed out on the unpredictable, chaotic, and glorious cultural fusion that was born from our tragedies and migrations. You leave the concert hall and look up at the silent, runic skyscrapers. You live in a world that is, by many measures, better. It is more just, more sustainable, more peaceful. You have never had to fear nuclear annihilation or ecological collapse. But you feel a strange sense of loss for a world you never knew. A world of greater suffering, yes, but also of greater variety, of more clashing, vibrant, and ultimately more creative energy. Your world is a beautiful, perfectly crafted, hand-carved wooden box. Ours is a chaotic, overflowing, and unruly treasure chest, filled with jewels and junk, gold and garbage, all thrown in together. You are safe in your perfection. But you wonder, sometimes, what treasures you have missed. And so, the dream fades. We return to our own timeline, to our own familiar world of concrete and chaos, of stunning beauty and profound injustice. The world we just left, the world of Markland, is a sobering vision. It stands as a testament to the idea that a single divergence, a single ship that did not fail, can rewrite the destiny of continents. It is a world that avoided some of our history's deepest horrors. There was no genocide of the Native American peoples on the same scale, no Atlantic slave trade, no Middle Passage, no Holocaust fueled by the pseudoscience of European racism, no climate crisis born from a rapacious, coal-fired industrial age. By these measures it seems a paradise. But it is a paradise with a price. The Kingdom of Markland and its allies built their stability on a different kind of exclusion, a fierce and guarded homogeneity. In avoiding the sins of conquest and slavery, they missed out on the unforeseen fruits of that suffering. The music, the literature, the science, the very vibrancy of our messy, multicultural world is a direct result of the collision of peoples, often under the most brutal of circumstances. Our greatest strengths grew in the cracks of our deepest historical wounds. Is a world that is more just but less diverse, more stable but less dynamic, truly better? Is the quiet, sustainable but culturally monolithic society of Markland superior to our own loud, polluted, and wildly creative one? There is no easy answer. The story of Markland reminds us that history is not a simple morality play of good versus evil. It is a complex tapestry of trade-offs, of unintended consequences, where the path to a better world may lead to a future that is safer, but smaller and quieter, with a little less of the chaotic, unpredictable, and heartbreaking magic that makes us human.